You all know the United States is a pretty big place with 50 states. Australia is about the same size as the US, but it is divided into only 7 states and one capital district, just like our capital, Washington, D.C. I've been to Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, and we now live in Western Australia. I am going to tell you about the trip we made at the end of last year to Tasmania. We first stopped at a beach called 7 Mile Beach. It had a lot of really big shells. I put pressure on the puddle of water in the sand and it seemed to dry up. Then, when I release the pressure, the sand moves apart and you can see the puddle of water again. These are big chunks of coral. This is what coral looks like in the ocean. The coral reefs around the world are dying because of climate change. This chunk of slime is actually the egg sac from a moon snail. It is very common and the cells for this animal are all over the beaches. Moon snails have tongues that are rough enough to drill holes in shells of other shell animals. Then they eat them through that hole. If you ever have found a shell with a small hole in it, it was probably eaten by a moon snail. Then we drove through the town to go to the Royal Botanical Gardens. My mom really likes the plants in Australia. I had to help her with the map. This is a banksia tree. It has really interesting seed pods. Eventually the hairs fall off and it looks like this. The word endemic means that a species only exists in a certain part of the world. Scientists say that 84% of the plants that grow in Australia are endemic. That means you won't find these plants anywhere else. This plant is called oxtongue. Underneath all those blooms is kind of an ugly plant that looks like, well, oxtongue. This funny cactus is called old man cactus, and it comes from Mexico. This agave plant lives for about 10 years, then it starts to produce this massive blossom. After it blooms, it dies. That's just the normal life cycle of the plant. I didn't love the botanical garden, but some things looked pretty cool. Then we walked through the rainforest called Fern Glade. Can you guess why it's called Fern Glade? The trees are really tall. This tree was happy to see us. This is a cool caterpillar hanging in the air.
There's a bridge.
It was a long walk, so I'll take you through quick. Then we went to the top of Mount Wellington. It was cloudy when we got to the top. We were actually in the clouds.
So we go see if we can find pictures where we can see.
It's torn. You said it was torn. Yeah, that's
There were some really cool rocks to climb on and something that looks like a time portal, so I decided to see where it would take me.
yeah.
This is the view from the top when it isn't cloudy. The next day, we went to some markets by the pier. This soccer ball was $500, and I think it would hurt to kick or bump it with my head. The Tasman Bridge was struck by a ship in 1975. Notice the headlights of two cars pointing down from the top. 12 people died in this accident. The support pillars were not replaced when it was rebuilt. You can still see the spaces where the pillars used to be. Our flight back to Melbourne was delayed for over an hour. The airport is so small we actually got to see our plane arrive. It was a cool trip to Tasmania. I hope you enjoyed it too.